Hi, it's Greg here, and I've got your Daily 5. First thing I want to talk about is the Fed rate. And one of the things that I'm focused on for 2023 is to see if this goes out of control. And what I don't, we're at an interesting inflection point in one of my charts later on. We'll show that. But the big thing that I want to focus on here is the rate of change that we have done over the interest rate increases has been extreme. This still doesn't even have the change on Feb 1 on it. StockCharts picks up the data directly off the Fed site and they don't update yet. But the point I want to make here is this rate of change is huge, and even if you started at a 1% rate of change, we're still double anything we've ever done before. So that's pretty big. The second thing is that this momentum change keeps swinging wider and wider. And the reason I brought it up again this time, I've done it before on the Daily 5, but the reason I brought it up now is the problem with it takes roughly a year for interest rate increases to start pushing through the economy. And to me, it feels like, we started a year ago now. And so now what we want to watch is how this actually gets absorbed by the economy. And if the Fed has to continue to fight strong inflation, I think this becomes a big problem. So it's one of the areas that I really want to focus on, and just never forgetting, because the target rate is now going to be above where we got to in 06 and 07 when we had the housing problems back then. So if that's going to happen in the next 6 months or so, then we've probably got a bigger problem. The next one I've got is Century Aluminum, and I picked this one because it's a metal, but because it's also a pretty good economic indicator, and it's just it's not steel, it's not copper, and I've got copper miners in here, but the Century Aluminum chart has this really nice head and shoulders base on it. What I don't like is the selling over the last 2 weeks on higher volume as the PPO sits right at zero. So I want to watch and make sure that these materials come out of this, I'll call it the base of 2022, and start to rise higher. And we can see they did this same sort of setup over here and then broke out and took off to the upside. So we have these bases set up on quite a few charts. And so I think it's a pretty important place for us to really focus in on and make sure that these raw materials stocks start to really push up here. I picked this company mostly because it's an electronic equipment company that has the same setup as the aluminum company I just showed. And the point I want to make is lots of the charts in the market have this exact setup. And so if we want to keep watching this, the market breakout here, that would be very bullish, obviously. When we look at how the breakout worked back in 2020, we shot up, pulled back for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, ran up again, pulled back for 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then ran up again. So we've kind of run up, had our 3, 4, 5 weeks, pulled back, run up, and now are we going to sit here and have a 3, 4, 5 week pullback? That's a good question. Or is this a bigger problem? And again, it's will the rapid rate of change in the Fed interest rates start to affect all of these companies? The reason I contrasted this Cognex Corp with Century Aluminum is you see the same chart pattern on so many charts, and if they all start to fail together, I think we're setting up for a notable decision. And if they're all able to just keep riding this trend up, this is a much more positive place on the charts. So it's definitely not a place that I want to be, getting short the market tactically or anything like that. We don't have any evidence of big failure yet, and we're having lots of volatility. We're having days moving up 2%, down 1.5%, up 2%. So these volatile days are telling us that the market is having trouble getting settled in on which way we're going to go. We have consumer price index information tomorrow, February 14th, and we have options expiration on Friday, all of which leads us to be really focused in here. It's quite an interesting place on the charts. So this is the 10-year yield, and this is part of the discussion around the Fed. And what you notice here is, since we've started to have, I'll call it the inflationary spike, the PPO has stayed above zero for the whole period. And so if we're going to turn up here, that looks very bullish to me. If we have the opposite problem where we break down here, that would be bullish yields. But if we break down below zero, obviously that would probably indicate that the high we're looking for in interest rates is finally in, and we are going lower. Now, this trend has broken out here on the short-term basis. This little tick down is a Monday morning thing. But I want to watch this big trend here, and we're at a critical inflection point. And then just to make it difficult, we did have one of these periods that dipped below our line here. We probably would have set up our line a little bit tighter, ran down, and then took off to the moon again. Really important place to be paying attention to the yields. I think if the yields start to rise up again here, and the 1 year broke out last week to new highs in the 3-month. So if the shorter time frames continue extending and we start to see these long-term time frames, 5, 10, and 30 start to make new highs, I think that'll be a bigger problem for us. So even if you're just trading equities, try and keep track of what's going on in these yield charts, because if yield goes higher, I would expect this to mark a significant problem for the early part here of 2023. I put the copper miners on here, and you might remember the nice setup that was sitting there on the Century aluminum chart with that base, and the chart was just starting to break out. Copper and steel both have a similar chart here where you got an uptrend, a pullback, an uptrend, a pullback. And on the steel chart, it actually broke out and failed to hold the breakout. Copper has broken out, but pulled back. Copper miners pulled back. And there's some gold slash copper miners. So it might be a little bit of the effect on gold. But what we want to watch for is, do we have a left ahead and a right here? And all of a sudden this starts to break down meaningfully. Or are we just getting our started and we're going to race to the upside? Now, if we're talking about the bigger picture for the environment and green energy, copper is one of those big things. Aluminum is one of those big things that we'll need for the energy transition. The real question for me is, this chart's, I don't want to say the opposite, but it's similar. The chart is nothing like the aluminum chart. It is like the steel chart. And what I'm wondering here is, do we break down or do we break out to the upside? So again, we're literally at this big decision point in the markets trying to figure out which way this goes. When I think back to that first chart of the Fed, I'm much more worried that this doesn't work out well. And so if you're interested in protecting capital, for me, this is a critical place on the chart to pay attention. I do not want to fall asleep here. So if you're interested in the work we do at the Osprey Strategic, somehow I didn't write in currently 47%, but what we do is we have some weekly newsletters, weekly videos, and a monthly conference call that we talk about. I'm going to be hosting a workshop for that on Wednesday. If you're interested, you can find the link in the show notes below. And the title is Inspiring Hope, Improve Your Paths to Profit. So try to keep track of the logo we have is for timing the market where you go in, you find what you like at the right time, and then try to ride that higher. I think it works pretty well. We've got a continually growing list of clients. And I think if you're finding that you're entering the market too late after a market turn or staying in too long, then perhaps this can help you work through that. So again, go to the show notes and there should be a bit.ly link down there that you could click on and go to register. So with that, thanks for taking the time to join me. Pretty important week to make sure you're focused here. We've got the CPI report on Tuesday morning, and how that comes out, I think, will really drive how February, March look. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video